Welcome to ESL listening practice. You know, we were actually just talking about this before we started recording.
Oh, yeah, we were.
Getting a promotion, making a deep connection with a native speaker, or just commanding respect in a room. It all usually comes down to a shockingly small number of specific words.
It really does. And I mean, if you are listening to this right now, chances are you've already conquered the absolute hardest part of language acquisition.
Yeah, that massive, exhausting mountain from absolute beginner to intermediate.
Exactly. You know how to order coffee, you can survive a stressful Zoom meeting, and you can tell a relatively coherent story about your weekend.
But let's be honest here, you are probably feeling a little stuck right now.
Right. You are standing on what linguists and teachers refer to as the intermediate plateau.
Yeah, the plateau. You can communicate the facts of your life, but you don't always feel like, well, you.
And it is arguably the most frustrating phase of language learning, but it's also the most rewarding once you finally break through.
Oh, for sure.
Reaching that B2 level, that upper intermediate sweet spot, it means you are no longer just surviving in the English language. You are actually living in it.
Right. You're expressing nuanced opinions and you're understanding native speakers without that exhausting, high latency mental translation.
Yes, and you are starting to sound natural, but to make that leap, you can't just keep doing what you did to get to B1. You need a very specific, upgraded set of cognitive tools.
It's like, imagine you are an artist painting a portrait of your life, but right now you only have the primary colors, like just red, blue, and yellow.
That's a great way to put it.
Sure, you can paint a house or a tree, and people looking at the canvas will know what it is. It functions, but it lacks shading.
Yeah, it lacks depth. It lacks that vibrant, full-color expression of your true personality.
Exactly. You end up sounding a bit flat, maybe a bit transactional, and that is exactly what our mission is today.
Over our years of teaching, researching language acquisition, and, observing thousands of students try to make this exact transition, we have identified a core set of vocabulary.
Right. We've compiled 35 plus essential B2 words and expressions. And to be clear, these aren't obscure academic words you'll only see in a Victorian novel.
Not at all. These are the heavy lifters, the structural words that native speakers use constantly in everyday conversations.
In high-stakes work environments and in complex discussions.
Yeah, they are the words that do the heavy emotional and logical lifting in a sentence. We are going to hand you that full color palette today.
So you can finally express exactly what is in your head with all the nuance it deserves. And we are going to jump straight in.
Let's do it.
Because before you can master the English language as a whole, you really have to master the vocabulary required to describe your own learning journey.
Right. You have to be able to articulate ambition and progress.
Exactly. These are the action verbs and core nouns that describe the mechanics of moving from where you are right now to where you desperately want to be.
So let's look at setting the target first.
The core words here are achieve, challenge, and effort. Now, I know what a lot of learners are thinking right now because I hear it in my classes all the time.
Oh, I bet I know what it is.
Yeah. They think achieve sounds incredibly formal. It sounds like something a politician says or something you read in a corporate brochure.
Right. They wonder why they should use a heavy word like achieve when they could just say, I did it.
Or, I finished my goal.
Yeah, it is a totally valid hesitation, but it gets right to the heart of what B2 vocabulary actually does.
How so?
Well, when you say I did it, you are being purely factual. It's a B1 statement. It tells me the action is complete and nothing more.
Okay.
But the word achieve carries immense psychological weight and narrative power. To achieve means to successfully reach a goal, but with a built-in implication.
Like an unspoken rule that it took hard work.
Exactly. It implies sustained work, time, dedication, and probably some suffering. You do your laundry, you finish your lunch.
But you achieve fluency.
Yes. You achieve your dream of studying abroad. When you use the word achieve, you are signaling to the listener that this wasn't just a casual task.
It was a significant milestone that you fought for, so it's almost like a status indicator.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
It elevates the conversation and the way people perceive your competence. If you are sitting in a job interview in English and you say, I did a lot of sales last year, it sounds okay.
Yeah, it just means you did your job.
But if you sit up straight and say, I achieved all my sales targets, suddenly you don't just sound like an employee.
You sound like a professional who sets a vision, executes a strategy, and conquers the objective. It literally changes your identity in the eyes of the listener.
You go from a passive participant to an active driver of results.
And the reality is, when you set out to achieve something meaningful, you are inevitably going to hit a wall. Which brings us to the next vital word in this framework.
Challenge.
Yes, challenge. This is a fascinating word in English, especially when you look at how it operates in professional and academic cultures.
A challenge is something difficult that requires effort. But notice what word we deliberately did not use there.
Right, I didn't say problem. Intermediate learners use the word problem as a blanket term for absolutely every point of friction in their lives.
Oh, I see this constantly. English grammar is a problem. My commute to work is a problem.
This new software is a problem.
If you listen to a B1 speaker, their entire life sounds like an endless series of insurmountable problems.
It makes them sound chronically stressed or negative, even if they're actually quite happy people.
Precisely. And that's because words dictate perception. Native speakers, particularly in the modern workplace, heavily prefer the word challenge.
Learning a new language is a big challenge. Why? Because the word challenge completely reframes a difficulty.
It turns an obstacle into an invitation.
Exactly. A problem is a dead end. It stops you. A challenge is a mountain. It invites you to climb it and grow in the process.
Think about the psychological difference there. If your boss hands you a massive, complicated new project, and you sigh and say, well, this is a big problem,
You instantly sound negative, resistant, and perhaps overwhelmed.
but if you look at the same pile of work and say, this is a great challenge, you sound eager, resilient, and highly capable.
I love that. It's not just a vocabulary swap. It is a complete mindset shift encoded into a single word.
It's the linguistic equivalent of a superhero putting on their cape. This is a challenge.
And of course, to overcome that challenge, you are going to need our third word in this group.
Effort. E-F-F-O-R-T. Effort is the physical and mental energy you use to do something.
But we really need to pause here because this word is a massive trap for intermediate learners when it comes to translation.
It really is. This is where we need to introduce the concept of collocations.
Yes, collocations are simply words that naturally travel together in a language. Native speakers don't think about them, they just use them by instinct.
Like in many Romance languages, for example, the literal translation of the verb you pair with effort is to do.
So learners constantly say, I will do an effort. And to a native ear, that sounds incredibly jarring.
Right. In English, you do not do an effort. You make an effort.
Or if it's a really big project, you put effort into something.
Wait, let's unpack that for a second because I always want to know the why behind these rules. Why do we make an effort instead of do an effort?
Is there a logical reason, or is it just one of those annoying English quirks?
Yeah, exactly.
There is actually a subtle logic to it. In English, we generally use do for repetitive tasks, obligations, or actions that don't produce a new physical object.
Like doing the dishes, doing your homework, doing your taxes.
Exactly. But we use make when we are creating something, constructing something, or producing a result that wasn't there before.
Making dinner, making a mess, making a decision.
Right. Because effort requires you to generate energy and focus from within yourself to alter reality. English treats it as an act of creation.
You are making the effort exist. Improving your English requires you to generate that energy.
You are making an effort just by actively listening to this audio and analyzing the structures today.
That makes perfect sense. You are manifesting the energy. Okay, so we have our targets set.
We know we want to achieve our goals, we actively accept the challenge, and we are generating the necessary effort.
But a huge part of learning, whether it's a language, an instrument, or a new sport, is tracking the journey. How do you actually know you are moving forward?
If you don't have the words to describe the mechanics of your own improvement, you can't optimize it.
So let's look at the core words for tracking the journey. Approach, develop, progress, and improve.
These 4 words represent a highly cohesive learning strategy when you link them together. Let's start at the foundation with approach.
This can function as a noun or a verb, but let's look at it as a noun here.
Your approach is your specific, unique way of doing something or solving a problem. It's your methodology.
Because everyone has a different approach to learning languages, right?
Absolutely. Some people are highly analytical. They love grammar workbooks and syntax trees. That is their approach.
Others are purely auditory. They love listening to spoken audio and mimicking the sounds. That's their approach.
Recognizing and naming your approach is the first vital step to taking control of your learning.
Right, because if your approach is effective, you will naturally start to develop. Now, develop is a word that B1 learners often shy away from because it feels a bit academic.
That just used get better instead.
Yeah. But to develop means to grow or improve specific, isolated skills over time. You don't just develop globally, you develop a targeted ability.
Like reading complex articles helps develop your vocabulary, speaking with native speakers helps develop your conversational reflexes.
I like to think of it like photography. You develop a photograph slowly in a dark room. The image gets clearer and clearer the longer you work on it.
That is a brilliant analogy. It is a slow, organic, compounding growth. And as you painstakingly develop those specific skills, you eventually start to see progress.
Progress is improvement over time. It is the forward momentum.
Now, if you are listening to this, I need you to lean in and pay very close attention right here. This is one of the most persistent, universally common mistakes.
The one that keeps incredibly smart people permanently stuck at the B1 level.
Yes. In English, the word progress is an uncountable noun.
Oh, absolutely. I hear this mistake across the board from almost every linguistic background. I made a huge progress today. Or, I am making many progresses in my class.
Exactly. You cannot say a progress. You cannot pluralize it to progresses. It is simply progress.
And the reason for this ties back to how the English brain categorizes reality, doesn't it?
It does. We treat progress not as a series of individual discrete jumps or objects, but as a continuous substance like water or air.
You don't have one water or two waters, you just have water.
Similarly, you make progress. You will see progress if you practice regularly. It implies a steady, continuous flow of forward movement rather than a checklist of isolated events.
So if you want to sound instantly more advanced, drop the A and drop the S. Just say, I am making progress.
And what is the ultimate result of generating this continuous flow of progress? You improve.
To improve means simply to become better at something. But it is the ultimate action word of ambition.
Listening to this audio every day is how you improve. You improve your listening comprehension,
which in turn improves your pronunciation, which ultimately improves your confidence.
If we synthesize this entire framework, the sophisticated B2 learner's journey sounds like this. You choose a smart approach, which helps you develop your targeted skills,
allowing you to make continuous progress every day.
So you continually improve and finally achieve your goal.
Wow. If you can articulate that sentence, you have a highly fluent, articulate way to describe your life's ambitions.
It sounds incredibly professional.
If someone asked me about my language journey and I answered with that framework, I would sound like I have a PhD in self-management.
But of course, as we all know, the journey is never a straight line. Life constantly gets in the way.
Right. Once you have the vocabulary to describe your lofty goals, you need the gritty verbs to navigate the daily obstacles of language learning, work, and personal relationships.
Exactly. A major part of stepping into the B2 identity is expressing how you manipulate your environment.
At the B1 level, you are largely reacting to the world. Things just kind of happen to you.
But at B2, you are actively adjusting reality. You are handling friction, making calculated choices, and modifying your routine.
I always like to compare these next four verbs to the dials on a massive audio mixing board in a music recording studio.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Yeah, you have all these different tracks: work, study, sleep, social life, stress, and you are constantly turning things up or turning things down to get the perfect mix in your life.
The core words here are increase, reduce, maintain, and avoid.
The mixing board analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. Let's look at turning the dials up and down.
Increase means to deliberately make something larger in number, amount, or intensity.
A company wants to increase its quarterly sales. You want to increase your active vocabulary. You physically grab the dial and turn it up.
Conversely, the opposite action is reduce, to actively make something smaller or less intense.
Regular cardiovascular exercise can reduce your baseline stress levels. Actively listening to native speakers will reduce the time it takes you to translate thoughts in your head.
You are turning the dial down on the negative inputs.
Notice the precision of these verbs. At B1, if you want more of something, you say make bigger or go up. If you want less, you say make smaller or go down.
But increase and reduce are the standard professional B2 words. They instantly make you sound more educated.
But what happens when the dial's exactly where you want it? You've got the perfect balance of study and free time, and you just want to lock it in place.
That is the struggle of the word maintain. Maintain is a fascinating concept because it implies fighting against entropy.
To maintain means to continue doing something at the exact same level without letting it drop or degrade.
The unspoken rule of the word maintain is that keeping things the same actually requires constant energy.
It is incredibly difficult to maintain motivation over a 2-year language learning journey.
You have to work out and meal prep, to maintain a healthy diet. You have to practice speaking every week to maintain your English fluency.
If you take your hands off the mixing board, the levels won't just stay there, they will naturally drop. Maintaining is an active, aggressive process against decay.
That is such a crucial distinction. We often think of maintenance as doing nothing, but linguistically, it implies ongoing effort.
And speaking of active processes, the last dial on our mixing board is the ultimate control, the mute button, the word avoid.
To avoid means to deliberately stay away from someone or something, or to actively stop something from happening.
And this is where we need to dive into the grammatical mechanics, because avoid is a notorious trap.
It really is. Grammatically, if you use the verb avoid and you want to follow it with an action, that second action must absolutely be in the own form, the gerund.
Yes, you avoid translating, you avoid eating late at night, you avoid making the same mistake twice.
Exactly. If you say to a native speaker, I avoid to translate, they will absolutely understand what you mean. Communication has occurred.
But it is a glaring B1 error that immediately flags you as a lower-level speaker.
Mastering avoid plus the gerund is a classic B2 milestone. And there is a philosophical reason for this in English grammar.
Oh, I love the philosophy of grammar.
Gerunds, the ing words, often represent ongoing concepts, states, or factual experiences. Infinitives, the two ing words, often represent potential, future, or abstract ideas.
I see.
You avoid things that are real, ongoing threats. You avoid the experience of translating. Therefore, we use the gerund.
I have never heard it explained that way. You avoid the ongoing state. That makes it so much easier to remember.
So, as a piece of direct advice for you listening, try to avoid translating every word in your head.
Instead, try to understand the concept directly in English, which requires a lot of cognitive processing.
And that pivots us perfectly to the next set of words, which are all about mental processing and managing success.
The core words here are consider, manage, and flexible.
These words represent a significant internal shift in how you process the world. Let's look at consider.
To consider isn't just a synonym for thinking about something.
No, it has a much deeper etymology. It means to think carefully and deliberately about something, usually before making a significant decision.
Right. It's the difference between a passing thought and deep analysis. If I say, I'm thinking about what to have for lunch, that's casual. It requires no real brain power.
But if I say, I am considering moving to a new city, that implies I have a mental spreadsheet open. I'm weighing the pros and cons. I'm taking the situation seriously.
Exactly. And just like our previous word, avoid, the word consider also violently forces the next verb into the gerund form.
You should consider practicing your English listening skills every day. You might consider re-listening to this audio tomorrow to solidify the vocabulary.
Using consider plus an ing verb is a wonderfully gentle but powerful way to suggest an idea or state your own intentions.
Now, what happens when you carefully consider your options? You make a solid plan, you start executing it, and then reality hits and things get incredibly difficult.
That is when you need the word manage. Manage is such a fantastic, heroic verb.
It really is. It means to succeed in doing something, but with a very specific narrative flavor. Succeeding despite extreme difficulty.
That despite difficulty element is the entire soul of the word. If you come to me and say, I finished the quarterly report, it's neutral fact. The report is done.
But if you come to me, wipe the sweat from your forehead, and say, I managed to finish the report on time, you are telling me a whole dramatic story in one sentence.
You are implicitly telling me that the deadline was impossibly tight. Maybe your software crashed twice. Maybe you were running on 2 hours of sleep.
But you fought through the friction and you emerged victorious.
She managed to finish the project. It automatically gives you credit for the unseen hard work.
And notice the grammatical structure there. Managed to do something. Because it's a potential goal you finally reached, we use the infinitive.
I managed to wake up early, despite the rain. I managed to pass the B2 exam despite my test anxiety. It is a word of triumph.
But to manage all these chaotic challenges that life throws at you, you need to possess the trait described by our next word, flexible.
This is an adjective, and it means being able to change or compromise easily according to the shifting demands of the situation.
Your study schedule should be flexible. If you miss a day of practice because you were sick, a rigid learner quits entirely.
A flexible learner adjusts the plan and studies double the next day.
Having a flexible mindset is arguably the single most important psychological trait of a successful language learner.
We try to treat languages like math. Rigid rules, clear inputs and outputs.
But languages aren't math. They are messy, constantly evolving, chaotic human systems.
You have to be cognitively flexible to absorb the weird exceptions and the strange idioms.
Absolutely. So we now have the vocabulary to manage our personal tasks, adjust our environments, and regulate our internal thoughts.
We can consider options, we can manage crises, and we can increase or reduce our efforts.
But language, fundamentally, does not happen in a vacuum inside your own head. The entire purpose of language is to interact with other human beings.
Which means we need to talk about professional dynamics and interpersonal relationships.
Because passing a Cambridge or IELTS test is great, but operating at a B2 level is really about functioning smoothly in an English-speaking workplace or thriving in a social group of international friends.
You need a specific vocabulary to navigate adult responsibilities, build trust, and collaborate without causing offense.
Let's start with the vocabulary of taking ownership and providing value to others. The core words here are responsibility, reliable, benefit, and opportunity.
Now, I can immediately hear some listeners pushing back on these. They might think, responsibility, reliable. I'm just hanging out with friends at a pub or talking to my coworkers casually by the coffee machine.
Aren't these corporate buzzwords too stiff for normal life?
Exactly.
It's a very common misconception, but the answer is a definitive no. In adult life, these are everyday, foundational concepts.
Let's look at responsibility. Yes, it means a duty you have at work, but it broadly refers to anything that is your moral or practical job to deal with.
Many adults have deep family responsibilities. If you are invited to a late dinner and you can't go, a B1 speaker might say, I can't, I have things to do.
It sounds a bit vague, almost dismissive.
But if you say, I can't make it, I have family responsibilities tonight, it instantly commands respect. It shows you are an adult managing important duties.
It sets a boundary. And we have to talk about the pronunciation here, because it is notoriously difficult for learners.
Let's break the mechanics of it down. Responsibility, 6 syllables.
The primary stress falls heavily on the bill. Responsibility. If you can fluidly drop the word responsibility into a casual conversation, you instantly sound like an advanced speaker.
And when you are a person who handles their responsibilities well, people naturally begin to describe you with our next word. Reliable.
This is an absolutely essential B2 adjective. It describes someone or something that you can trust completely to work well or behave exactly as expected every single time.
A good, thick dictionary is a reliable learning tool. A coworker who never misses a deadline is a reliable colleague.
A reliable car starts every morning, even in the freezing snow. The adjective comes from the root verb rely, which means to depend on.
If people can rely on you, you are reliable. In Western corporate culture, being called reliable is arguably one of the highest compliments you can receive.
It means you reduce anxiety for everyone around you.
Exactly. You are a safe bet. And when you are a reliable person, you naturally bring a benefit to your team, your friends, or your own life.
A benefit is a purely positive result, an advantage, or a helpful outcome. Regular exercise has massive health benefits. Learning English has enormous financial and social benefits.
This is a great place to point out a very subtle distinction. Often, intermediate learners use the word advantage when they should really use benefit.
Oh, that's a good point. An advantage usually implies a comparison.
Yeah.
You have an advantage over someone else, like at a tennis match or business negotiation.
It has a competitive edge.
Right.
But a benefit is just a pure, isolated, positive outcome.
The benefit of listening to audio practice is that you can do it while commuting. You aren't competing with anyone. It's just a good thing for you.
Which is a highly efficient use of time. And optimizing your time leads directly to our final word in this professional group, opportunity.
An opportunity is a good chance to do something. A specific alignment of circumstances that makes it possible to do something you want to do.
Traveling abroad for work is a great opportunity to practice your English.
And here is another classic trap where learners get betrayed by their native languages. So many B2 learners default to the word possibility when they actually mean opportunity.
They will say, I had the possibility to visit London last year.
To a native speaker, that phrasing sounds very strange.
Yeah.
Possibility just means something could mathematically or logically happen. It is neutral.
It is possible it will rain tomorrow. But opportunity means it is a good chance, a lucky, beneficial, or rare situation that you should take advantage of.
You want to actively seek out opportunities, not just observe mathematical possibilities.
That is a vital distinction for sounding natural. You look for opportunities.
Yeah.
Now, let's transition from how we describe our value to how we actively manage the emotions of the people we are talking to.
This is the realm of emotional intelligence in English. The core words here are suggest, admit, encourage, and participate.
I really do view these as the core emotional intelligence tools. If you use them correctly, you can navigate delicate social situations, disagree with people, and lead a team without making anyone angry.
Let's start with suggest. This is how you gently introduce an idea or recommend a course of action without sounding bossy or dictatorial.
You don't point your finger and say, you must watch this movie. You say, I suggest watching English movies with subtitles.
And here we must sound the grammar alarm bells loud and clear.
Suggest is famous among linguists and English teachers because it is abused so frequently by learners.
Because of how it translates in other languages, learners constantly try to use the infinitive with it. You cannot, under any circumstances, say, I suggest you to watch this movie.
Never. I promise you, to a native speaker, I suggest you to do this. Sounds like nails on a chalkboard. It sounds clunky and weirdly aggressive.
It does. English gives you two elegant choices here. First, if you are making a general recommendation, use the gerund. I suggest watching the movie.
Second, if you are directing the advice at a specific person, use a full that clause. I suggest that you watch the movie.
Both of those are perfectly natural, highly polite B2 structures. It softens your advice and makes you sound culturally fluent.
Now, what happens when you confidently make a suggestion, your team follows it, and it turns out to be a complete disaster?
That is when you need emotional intelligence tool number 2, admit.
To admit means to accept and say that something is true, especially something bad, embarrassing, or legally damaging.
Admitting requires immense vulnerability. He admitted that he made a mistake. It carries so much more gravity than just saying I was wrong.
When you admit something, you are taking full psychological ownership of a harsh reality. And there is a high-level grammatical structure attached to this as well.
If you admit with an action, you use the preposition to followed by the ing form. He admitted to making a mistake.
She admitted to stealing the money.
Admitted to making. That is a beautiful advanced structure. Now, let's say your friend or colleague admits they made a massive mistake and they feel terrible about it. What is your role?
You use our next word. You encourage them.
To encourage means to give someone confidence, hope, or support when they are down.
I love the etymology of this word. It literally comes from the old French prefix on meaning to put in, and courage meaning heart or spirit.
To encourage literally means to put heart into someone.
Teachers should encourage their students to speak without fear. Good managers encourage their employees to take risks.
When you encourage someone, you are emotionally fueling them so they are brave enough to try again.
And what exactly are you encouraging them to do? You're encouraging them to participate.
To participate means to take part in an activity or event, to actively join in rather than just observing.
Don't just sit quietly in the back of the Zoom call. Participate in the discussion. Don't just show up to the community cleanup. Participate in the hard work.
It highlights the difference between being a spectator and being a player. At the B1 level, you attend things. You attend a meeting. You attend a class.
But at the B2 level, you participate.
At B1, you attend. At B2, you participate. That is the exact kind of behavioral shift we're talking about.
It changes your entire posture in the language. You are no longer a tourist. You are a resident.
And speaking of posture, mastering these interpersonal interactions obviously builds external success. You make friends, you get the job.
But how should a B2 learner feel internally as they start deploying this high-level vocabulary?
This represents a profound psychological change in how you frame your own reality and your place in the conversation. Let's look at the internal state of the learner first.
The core words here are confident, comfortable, and effective.
Every learner I have ever spoken to says their main goal is to be confident.
Confident means feeling entirely sure about yourself, your abilities, and your value.
It means you aren't sweating and second-guessing every single grammar rule before you open your mouth to order a sandwich.
But here is the cognitive trap. People think confidence is a prerequisite for speaking. It isn't.
Confidence is a trailing indicator. It is the result of repeated action.
You don't wait to feel confident before you speak. You speak so that you eventually become confident. You build it block by block, mistake by mistake.
And as you slowly construct that confidence, you eventually unlock a state of being comfortable.
Now, normally we use the word comfortable to describe a physical object, a plush sofa, a good pair of running shoes, a warm bed.
But in the realm of language learning, being comfortable means existing in a state of cognitive ease. It means being relaxed and executing a task without mental friction or anxiety.
Cognitive ease is exactly it. You will feel more comfortable speaking English over time. It's a magical milestone.
It's that sudden, surprising moment when you're sitting at a dinner party. You realize you've been talking and laughing for 20 minutes, and you haven't consciously translated a single word in your head.
You aren't operating the language like a machine anymore. You are just existing inside it. You are comfortable.
And when you are both confident and comfortable, your communication naturally becomes effective.
Effective means successfully producing the specific desired result. If you negotiate a contract and the other party agrees to your terms, your English was effective.
Immersing yourself in audio content is an effective way to practice because it consistently produces the result of better neurological pattern recognition.
It's important to separate effective from efficient. Efficient means doing something quickly, using the least amount of time or energy. You can be very efficient at memorizing flashcards.
But effective means doing the right things that actually work in the real world. At the B2 level, your primary goal is to be highly effective.
To ensure that the complex, nuanced thought in your brain lands exactly as you intended in the other person's brain.
Precisely. Now, part of being an effective communicator is knowing how to manage the flow of information when talking to others. Conversations are messy.
Sometimes people make wrong assumptions, or you need to politely reject an idea and change direction. This requires specific framing tools.
The core words here are actually and instead.
Oh, actually. This single word might be one of the most vital tools in the entire B2 toolkit, and unfortunately, it is also one of the most dangerous linguistic traps for millions of learners.
Let's dive deep into this. Why is actually such a massive point of confusion? How do native English speakers use it differently than, say, a Spanish or French speaker might expect?
It comes down to a phenomenon called false friends. In many Romance languages, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, there is a word that looks and sounds almost identical to actually.
Actualmente, actuellement, and so on.
But in those languages, the word refers to time. It means currently, presently, or right now.
Right, so a learner will say, actually, I am living in London, meaning currently I am living in London, and the native speaker gets totally confused.
Exactly. Because in English, the word actually has absolutely nothing to do with time. Zero. It means, in fact, in reality, or truthfully.
It evolved to contrast reality against an assumption. We use it to state a fact that might surprise someone, or, most importantly, to politely correct a misunderstanding without starting an argument.
Let's give a real-world scenario. If a coworker says to you, I heard the new software system is a total nightmare to use and you've used it and liked it, you don't say, no, you are wrong, it is good.
That raises the tension. Instead, you say, actually, I found it pretty intuitive to use. You are gently contrasting their negative assumption with your positive reality.
It acts as a social shock absorber. Or imagine you're at a restaurant and the waiter sets down a plate and says, here is your chicken. If you say, no, I wanted fish, it feels confrontational.
But if you smile and say, actually, I ordered the fish, the word actually softens the correction. It implies, in reality, a small mistake has occurred.
It is an incredibly powerful diplomatic tool for maintaining social harmony while still advocating for yourself.
It is an absolute lifesaver. And our other reframing word is similarly useful for directing traffic in a conversation.
Instead means as an alternative. It is the pivot point where you reject one choice and offer another.
We use it constantly to propose better realities. You should watch English documentary videos instead of passively scrolling on social media.
Notice the grammatical structure we default to, instead of followed by the ing-twang gerund. Or you can use it powerfully at the absolute end of a sentence.
I realized scrolling on social media was making me anxious. I watched an English documentary instead.
It shows agency. It shows you have options and you are making active, deliberate choices. These words put the learner in the driver's seat of the conversation.
But here is the reality check. You can have all the action verbs, you can have the mindset words, and you can understand the grammar. But if you just speak in short, disconnected, isolated sentences, you still won't sound like a B2 speaker.
You will sound like a robot reading a grocery list. To achieve true fluency, we need the glue that holds these complex thoughts together.
This brings us to what is arguably the most structurally crucial part of language: linking words for advanced fluency.
To synthesize information, express layered opinions, and guide your listener through an argument, you need transitional vocabulary.
I always explain linking words to my students by comparing them to the joints in a skyscraper. A massive building can't just be rigid steel. It needs flexible joints that allow it to sway in the wind, or else it will snap.
Linking words are those flexible joints. They allow your sentences to sway, to change direction, to introduce contradictions without the whole conversation collapsing.
Let's look at the words for contrast and nuance. However, although, and on the other hand.
Let's examine the primary joint for contrast. However, it is used to show a strong, direct contrast between two separate sentences or complete ideas.
Memorizing vocabulary is critically important. However, practicing those words in real conversations is absolutely necessary for retention.
It is the sophisticated, formal, adult cousin of the word but.
When you are writing a professional email or arguing a point in a meeting, however, is your best friend, it signals to the listener that a pivot is coming.
And then we have the word although. Although means even though, and it is used to introduce a surprising contrast or a concession within the exact same sentence.
Although English grammar is notoriously difficult, the language is incredibly useful for international business.
It shows that two opposing realities can exist simultaneously. The difficulty of the grammar does not cancel out the usefulness of the language.
Using although correctly is a massive cognitive indicator to a native speaker that you have reached the upper intermediate level.
It proves your brain can hold two conflicting thoughts in suspension at the same time and resolve them.
It's the mark of a mature mind. And what if you want to step back and present two completely different sides of a complex debate? You use the phrase, on the other hand.
Having perfect grammar makes you sound agitated. On the other hand, confident communication is the ultimate goal.
This idiom is wonderfully physical. It implies you are weighing two separate things, literally like holding one idea in your left hand, observing it, and holding the opposing idea in your right hand.
It is the perfect framing device for debates, strategic discussions, or giving a balanced, objective opinion to your boss.
So those are our joints for contrast. But what if we want to build straight up? What if we want to construct a strong, undeniable, logical argument?
We need the words for cause, effect, and broad statements. The core words here are therefore, in addition, as a result, in general, and for example.
These words act as a map for your logical causality. They show the listener exactly how your brain is connecting cause A to effect B.
Let's start with the ultimate word of reason. Therefore, it means for that specific reason. English has become the global lingua franca. Therefore, millions of professionals study it every day.
It acts like the mathematical equal sign in a sentence. Premise A is true, therefore conclusion B is true. It is very formal and highly persuasive.
If you want a slightly more narrative, story-driven way to express consequence, you use as a result. She practiced her listening skills daily for 6 months. As a result, she passed the B2 exam with flying colors.
Both of those phrases answer the critical question, why? Then we have words designed to stack evidence. In addition, it simply means also, but it sounds so much more authoritative.
Active listening practice improves your pronunciation. In addition, it rapidly builds your subconscious vocabulary. You're building an impenetrable tower of evidence.
And finally, as you are building these complex arguments, you need the tools to frame your statements carefully so you don't sound arrogant or dangerously extreme.
That's where in general comes in. It means usually, or broadly speaking. In general, consistent daily practice leads to faster improvement than weekend cramming.
It shows your listener that you are wise enough to know there are exceptions to every rule, but you are accurately identifying the macro trend.
And you must always, always prove your broad trends with our last phrase, for example. Used to give a specific illustration of your point.
There are many highly effective ways to immerse yourself in English. For example, listening to audio discussions, watching documentaries, or joining online forums.
Never make a broad, sweeping statement without immediately backing it up with a tangible example. It grounds your abstract thoughts in reality.
Wow. Think about what happens when you combine these elements. If you take the linking words, however, although, therefore, as a result, and you combine them with the high-level verbs like achieve, manage, consider, and avoid.
You are suddenly speaking at a completely different cognitive altitude. The transformation in how people perceive your intelligence and competence is staggering.
It is the literal difference between merely surviving in English and truly thriving in it. We have now laid out the core B2 vocabulary framework from our research.
But here's the vital truth. Just intellectually understanding these definitions is only 10% of the battle. The real practical question is, how do we actually install these words into your neurology so they stay there permanently and become automatic reflexes?
Which brings us to our blueprint for retention. Because let me be brutally honest, if you just listen to us talk for this long, nodded your head in agreement, and then go about your day, the forgetting curve dictates that you will lose 90% of this specific vocabulary by tomorrow morning.
That is the harsh neurological reality of how human memory works. So here is our final professional insight on methodology. Do not, and I cannot stress this enough, do not attempt to memorize all 35 plus words we discussed today at once.
If you sit down with a giant list and try to force them into your short-term memory through sheer willpower, your brain will reject them. It will trigger massive cognitive overload.
So if you shouldn't cram, what is the specific actionable advice? How do you actually absorb this color palette?
You need to drip feed them into your active vocabulary through spaced repetition and emotional tagging. Try learning just 5 to 10 words at a time.
Pick 5 words from today's discussion that resonated with you. Maybe you pick achieve, avoid, consider, reliable, and although.
Okay, let's say I've written down those 5 words. Now what do I do with them?
You must use them actively across all 3 linguistic domains: speaking, writing, and listening. But the absolute secret to permanent retention is this: put them into deeply personal sentences every single day.
The human brain, specifically the hippocampus, prioritizes memories that are emotionally relevant to its own survival, identity, and daily life.
Do not write a generic sentence like, "The man achieved a goal." Your brain doesn't care about a random man. Right. I am working hard to achieve a promotion at my company by December.
Make it entirely about you. If you are drafting an email at work tomorrow, force yourself to delete the word also and replace it with in addition.
If you are talking to yourself in the shower, which, by the way, is a highly effective low-stress practice method, explain to yourself out loud why you are avoiding eating fast food today.
By applying this highly specific strategy, small, manageable batches, deep personal relevance, and daily active use, your English will improve at a rate much faster than you anticipate.
It's not magic. It's just the consistent, targeted application of high-value vocabulary. You will start to express your ideas with crystal clarity, you will decode complex conversations effortlessly, and you will sound incredibly natural.
I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. When you choose your 5 to 10 new words today, and you actively force yourself to use them in your daily life, I want you to pay very close attention to how you feel internally.
Notice how your personality in English actually starts to shift, because there is a concept in linguistics that suggests the words we possess dictate the boundaries of our reality.
When you gain this precise advanced vocabulary, it doesn't just change how you speak. Having the right structural words actually changes the kinds of complex, nuanced thoughts you are cognitively capable of having in your new language.
You literally become a deeper, more sophisticated version of yourself.
Keep practicing, keep expanding that color palette, and we will catch you in the next listening session.